Welcome to Inner Compass. I'm Karen Saupe. Today I have the rare opportunity to speak with the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. We'll hear about the challenges and successes he experienced with a coalition government. How does that even work? We'll find out on Inner Compass.
From the campus of Calvin College, this is Inner Compass, exploring how people use faith and ethics to guide them through critical issues of today.
My guest today is Yann Peter Balkenende, Prime Minister of the Netherlands from 2002 to 2010. Before that, he was a member of Parliament and also taught Christian social thought at the Free University of Amsterdam. Welcome, Yann Peter. You were involved in local politics from the beginning of your career, and you were an academic. At what point did you think seriously about running for Prime Minister?
That's difficult to answer. When I finished my studies, I studied law and history at the Free University. Then I started working at the think tank of my political party. But it was not, let's say, something to think about becoming member of parliament. It had to do with the content of our political views. At the same moment, and that was even before I finished my study law, I was already elected as a member of the City Council of Amstelveen. Mm-hmm. And I must say the combination has been an excellent one, because when you're working in The Hague, you're busy with theories, you're busy with generating new ideas on the concept of a responsible society. Right. But at the same moment, you're active at local level, and I think it has been a very good combination.
William F. Buckley once quipped that he would rather see the first 2,000 people in the Boston phone book govern than the Harvard faculty, for precisely for the reason that all that theory and no practice probably, I guess, made them out of touch. So you're saying a combination is really ideal.
Because I think I could take advantage of that situation. When I was in The Hague, I could talk about my local experiences. And when I was busy as a member of City Council, I could say, but no, it's not only these questions, it has also to do with the more general aspects. What is the more general theories about these issues?
That's great, and an unusual combination, I think. We need a quick lesson on Dutch political structure. There are three main political parties, correct?
In the past, you can say there were three political streams. One is the Social Democracy, let's say the Labour Party. Second, the Christian Democrats, I am a Christian Democrat, and the Liberals. But today, things have changed. Because in earlier days we had the three important parties, but you had also the smaller ones. We even had the Communist Party of the Netherlands, but also a party for the farmers, some small Christian parties. But today it's a completely different situation. Let's say the Socialist Party, a really left-wing oriented party, now in the polls is doing better than the Labour Party. We have a right-wing populist party, the Freedom Party. So things have changed in my country. There has been a time that you had rather stable situations. When a party like the Anti-Revolutionary Party, a Christian party, Protestant party, if they won 2 seats, that was fantastic. And when they lost 2 seats, it was terrible. But now parties can win 10 or 20 seats or lose. So things have changed. It's not a stable situation as in the past.
Is it more balanced in terms of diversity, or is it just sort of chaotic?
It's more confusing now. Okay. I think it's the best if you would have a situation that 2 parties have enough seats to have a combination. Mm-hmm. Because life is a bit easier when you have a 2-party coalition instead of a 3-party coalition, or even more. But I think there's a tendency you can see in many countries. Mm-hmm. So politics has changed, and that's also the case for the Netherlands. Okay,
and there's a House and a Senate.
Yeah.
And a Prime Minister who is equal to the other ministers, is that correct? Or
the situation in the Netherlands is that the Prime Minister is the first amidst its equals. Mm-hmm. So okay. There's an equal position for the Prime Minister and the other ministers. So in other countries you can see that the Prime Minister has another role. But we have a kind of balance between the role of the Prime Minister and the others. Having said that, you can see that the role of the Prime Minister is really increasing. Let me tell you a story. When I started as Prime Minister, I had a meeting with the former Prime Minister, Wim Kok. He's a Social Democrat. And he said, oh, Jan Peter, you will not have so many debates. You have the general political debates in September. You have the debate on the budget plans of the Department of General Affairs. You have the debates around the European Council. But that's a bit everything. But I had so many debates when I was Prime Minister. And the reason why, of course, has to do with the fact that members of Parliament say, oh, it's an important issue, so the Prime Minister must be there. So also from that respect, things have changed. Another point, and that's relevant to mention, in earlier days, let's say in the 60s, when we talked about European affairs, then it was predominantly a responsibility for the foreign minister. But today it's a matter of responsibility for the heads of government. So also from that perspective, you have to do much more things.
It's simply because there are more issues that are crucial to you. Okay. How much of that has to do with the existence of the European Union? Is that part of what's changed, or?
You can see that things have changed in Europe. The European Union is playing an important role. When we talk about regulation in Europe on environmental issues or all other issues, it's very important. We have one currency, we have the euro. So it is important to work together with other countries. I always like that. It's fascinating to work together with your colleagues in other countries. Good. But you have to be aware of the fact that we have one common market in Europe. Things have changed. In the 80s, everybody talked about the goal of Europe 1992, meaning one common market and a free flow of persons, capital, services. And so things have changed. We have one European market now, one currency, and we are dependent on each other. When you talk about international issues like climate change, energy supply, and so on, we need each other.
The Netherlands is a monarchy, technically, but it's been called one of the most democratic nations in the world. Why is that?
It's a funny story to tell. Usually you have in countries the situation that first you have monarchy and then you get a republic. We had the opposite. We started with a republic of the 7 united provinces, as we called it, and our monarchy started in the 19th century, after the French Revolution. We describe our constitutional system as a constitutional monarchy. So we have a king or a queen. Today, Queen Beatrix, she is the head of the state. But everything is linked to the responsibility of the ministers. So we have a rule. We have a head of state, but the ministers are always politically responsible for the acts of the queen. And I think that's so. We have a democracy, but I think it's a very good combination. I think a monarchy has to do with the history of your country.
Sure. So what is the role of the Queen?
The Queen is very much involved in all kinds of issues. She's visiting people in the country. When you have state visits, she is going to other countries on behalf of the Netherlands. Other heads of state are visiting the Netherlands. But also, every Monday, she speaks with the Prime Minister. So during the 8 years I was Prime Minister, every Monday I went to the Queen, talking about all these important issues. We have a very intelligent Queen. She is involved in a lot of issues. She shows a big interest. And what I noticed when I speak with heads of government in other countries, they are always impressed by the knowledge of our Queen. She knows her portfolios very well.
Earlier you talked about your decision to run for Prime Minister having to do more with commitment to policies and ideas than to personal ambition. Yeah. Tell me about your decision to run for Prime Minister.
Maybe it's good first to tell a nice story. I studied at the Free University, I mentioned that, and I defended my PhD thesis on government regulation and non-governmental organizations in February 1992. And then my father told a beautiful story. He said, when we had a dinner at the evening, he said, there has been a Balkenende who built the Katshuis, and the Katshuis is the official residence of the Dutch Prime Minister. So he said, once has been a Balkenende who built the Katshuis, now it's time that the Balkenende will live in the Katshuis. And we thought it's a very nice joke. But 10 years later, indeed, I became Prime Minister. Excellent. And that was my official residence. When I started as Prime Minister, it was a remarkable story because usually a Prime Minister has been member of a cabinet, Minister of Economic Affairs, Minister of Justice, but I only had been a member of Parliament. But I had a clear conviction that it was necessary to change things. I had a clear agenda. I wrote a book in those days called Different and Better, because I had the impression we have to change things. We need a policy of reform. Reform of the social security system, the public health system, the pre-pension facilities. I wanted to strengthen the Dutch economy, so I had a clear agenda. And I think it's necessary. If you want to govern in these days, you must have a long-term approach. you must clearly define goals. And I think that gives you the courage to do the work, because it's not easy. When I started, journalists, economists, politicians were blaming us. They were saying, you're ruining the economy. And I said, no, I have the conviction that's necessary to do these things. So we received criticism in 2002 and 2003. But in 2006, suddenly we saw that we were not walking behind in Europe, but we were one of the front runners. And then people said, you've done the right job. But it means you need some courage in the beginning.
You took the leap really because of your convictions.
Yeah, and what happened, it's a strange story. We had what we call the Purple Coalition. It was a coalition of the Social Democrats and 2 liberal parties. But already in 2001, I noticed that you could see the end of the life cycle of that coalition. People were waiting for something new. And then we had a political crisis in my party, 8 months before the elections. So that means that the leader in parliament, but also the party chairman, they both had to leave, and I had to take over. And then people said, well...
What was the crisis?
They disagreed about the future of our political party, the views and so on. So they both had to leave their jobs, and then I had to take over. And people said, well, Mr. Balkenende is a great guy if he can keep his 29 seats in parliament. And of course it was a dangerous affair to have such a crisis 8 months before the elections. But then we had also the following. I said something about the end of the life cycle of the Purple Coalition. I had ideas, and we have worked during the last years on finding out new ways of thinking. We said we need a new agenda for Dutch politics. And then in 2002 we started the campaign, and step by step we improved our situation. And then we won the elections. No 29 seats, but 43 seats. And because of the fact that we came out to be the largest party, some people said, now you have to do it. You have to do the job. And of course it was a risky affair to do it. But I was convinced that we had good ideas. I was convinced that it was necessary to change things in the Netherlands. And then we started.
And you had a mandate.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think in terms of parallels with United States politics.
But that's you have the differences here, because you have the Democrats and the Republicans. In the Netherlands, we always have coalition governments. We never have the situation that one party has the absolute majority. Let's take the United Kingdom. Now it's different, but usually you had the Labour Party or Conservative. And the Netherlands, we always have been a country of coalition governments. You have to work together.
So you've always had to cooperate, and that's the model.
Yeah.
There are lots of Christian parties throughout the world that are Christian in name only. Your party has been really built on convictions.
Yeah. First, something about the Dutch society. We have what we call a pillarized society. In earlier days, and now it has changed, but in early days people belonged to the Roman Catholic pillar, the Protestant pillar, or the neutral pillar. That means people had their own universities, schools, media organizations, newspapers. So we had a Roman Catholic party, and we had several Protestant parties. In the 70s, people start to talk about a combination of a Roman Catholic party and 2 Protestant parties. You can say it's good when you talk about political power. But the people who had the responsibilities in those days said, no, it's more than only power in politics.
It's about your convictions.
It's about, exactly, it's about convictions. And then people started to rethink the principles of Christian politics. They start to talk about what was the social teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. What was the view of the Roman Catholic Church when we talk about solidarity, human dignity? But at the same moment we talked about the Protestants' views on society. So we were busy to rethink what were the origins of thinking from a Christian perspective on society, economics and the role of the state. And then we developed in the 70s a new program of basic principles. So we talked in terms of public justice, stewardship, responsibility and solidarity.
Public justice, stewardship, responsibility and solidarity. That's pretty strong.
And then we defined the concept of a responsible society. And really that was challenging, because in the 70s people thought there will only be room for 2 political streams, liberalism and social democracy. It's state or market. And I never believed in that scheme. And the funny thing was that in the 80s we took over the initiative and we said, The welfare state has also a lot of difficulties. We are not talking about the responsibility of individuals, but also the common responsibilities. We are not talking about a civil society. So we were really engaged in developing and generating new ideas. And so we said we must have a new approach from welfare state to welfare society. We talked about the role of the NGOs. We talked about the role of civil society organizations. We talked about the question, what are the responsibilities of private companies? Because of the fact that you are thinking about the future of your country with new ideas, that means that we changed the political debate in our country.
It's very idealistic.
Yeah, and it was a fascinating time. We had a fantastic team. It was only a small team. We had the conviction that we had to change things. So I fully agree with you. When you talk about politics, it's not only about power. Of course you need power in politics. But it is a matter of having a long-term view, an approach, a view on society.
You're a professor of Christian social thought. What does that entail? What does that cover?
Christian social thought means that you are thinking about the future of society, the role of the government, the organization of the economy, but from a Christian point of view. And a key word is responsibility. When we talk about responsibility, that means the government has certain specific tasks, but the government also must create the room for NGOs, civil society organizations and the private sector to have their responsibilities. The private company has also social responsibilities. So thinking in terms of responsibility is key to Christian social thought.
In the United States, it feels to me as if when political parties start to think about Christian beliefs or religious beliefs in general, they go to single issues like abortion or marriage. It's not a broader picture. But how do you in the Netherlands address those specific issues?
Yeah, of course we have discussion then that's also about these issues. But talking about Christian social thought, that is really a concept for the role of the government, the markets, society.
It's a whole structural philosophy.
It's a structural philosophy, and it is a good question because when we talk about Dutch neoCalvinism, that was not only a matter of, let's say, the personal inspiration when you're a Christian, but it's also a message for changing things in politics and in society. Abraham Kuyper, in his days, he said, I want to have the Reformed churches. I have the conviction that we must have a free university in the Netherlands. He said, I want to improve the life of people with low incomes, the kleine luiden, as he mentioned it. He had a view on the structure of society. So when you talk about Christian values, it's not only about certain specific items, it has to do with a view on society. And therefore I have the impression that people like Abraham Kuyper are well known worldwide, just because of their view on the structure, the architecture of society.
But what keeps then a Christian nation from becoming like the worst things that happened in the Western Middle Ages, where it became just an oppressive monarchy?
Yeah. Of course, people abused, and that's happening today also. People abused religion. That has been part of history. But also you have to learn from history. And to my opinion, Christianity has to do with hope, future orientation, talking about what is really important in your life. But also make the connection with having a view on society. And that is what Calvin told, what Luther told. What people like Abraham Kuyper told. And I always had the feeling that I'm standing in that tradition. And therefore, I think it's so important to talk about values in politics. And today we're living in a world with, let's say, a strong orientation on the hypes, what's in the news today. And to my opinion, we need a long-term approach. When we talk about the aging of the population, issues around climate change or energy, we need a long-term approach. We must talk about the moral aspects in society. And you must have an international orientation. These things should be on the agenda.
Now, you had coalition governments, but you had to rebuild them several times as you were prime minister, right?
Yeah.
So how frustrating and difficult was that?
It was a very difficult time. But if you have two parties, life is easier.
You have fewer issues to work out.
Yeah, and when you have three parties, you can imagine that the role of the third party is extremely important because they have the power to say we can go on or we blow up the government.
But in the United States, it seems like even though we have two main parties, they're often paralyzed by an unwillingness to compromise.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for us?
Yeah. Of course, I'm following also debates in the U.S. Congress. Sometimes the Netherlands is being described as a polder model. You know, the polders are the space, the surface behind the dikes. And in early days, the farmers had to work together to keep these dikes intact, because you had to protect yourself. But the fact that you had to protect yourself by keeping intact the dikes was a common responsibility.
You have to help everyone.
Everybody must be aware of the fact that you have common responsibilities. In the Netherlands, we have an approach that we need each other. I had 4 cabinets, and let's say the unions, the labor unions, were criticizing us. But we were able to work on 4 social agreements with the social partners. So sometimes you can criticize each other. But there's also the conviction that if you want to realize changes, you need each other. And the reforms we realized in social security, the pre-pension facilities, the public health, it has been a combination of trying to find compromises within the cabinet, but also with the organizations of the employees and employees.
But did you ever have issues where the ideals were so polar opposite that there was no way to compromise?
That happened with my last cabinet. When we spoke about dismissal right, it's my conviction that we should do more for improving and strengthening the flexibility on the labor market. And we also made an agreement on that with the Labour Party. And we said, okay, we will work on a social agreement with the social partners. That's our common responsibility. But at the same moment, we as cabinet are responsible to deliver proposals on changing dismissal right in the Netherlands, because we need more flexibility on the labor market. And even after we realized the compromise, suddenly, and the union and the Labour Party said, no, we do not accept it. And that was a pity, because I think the Dutch economy is very strong. If you are considering international indicators, we're doing very well. We have the lowest unemployment rate, I think, worldwide. We have a strong economy, we have very strong companies, but the flexibility on the labour market, I think we could improve that situation.
Was Afghanistan a similar problem?
Yeah,
as far as
you're very well informed. That meant the end of my last cabinet. What happened? I had a clear conviction that we had to be in Afghanistan. And then I said to my people, it has to do with the solidarity with Afghan people. It has to do with the solidarity of the NATO partners, with the Americans and others. And then we decided to go to Uruzgan, a rather dangerous area. But we said it's important that we are delivering our solidarity with them. And then we took the decision to be there for 2 years. After 2 years, we said, okay, 2 years more, but then it will be over. But I had the impression, after 4 years, that it was good to do it 1 year more. I spoke about that with President Obama, with the Canadian Prime Minister. And I think it would have been a wise decision, because then we said, we will work with the concept of a training and transition mission. That means we will hand over the responsibilities to the Afghans in that region of Afghanistan. We spoke about it for months with the Labour Party. Then we had serious debates in 2010 in January. But after 3 weeks, suddenly they said, no, we have said it's 2 years more, but now it's over. And that meant the end of my cabinet. And it was a pity, because I think it would have been better if we could continue our responsibility in that region.
All your politics arise from faith-based convictions, personally.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, are there times when you simply have to say, I've done my best, or are there times when it's hard to sleep with compromises you've made or battles you've lost?
That's a good question. When you're active in politics and you must compromise, you must know very well what the limits are. You must know what your red lines are. Making compromise means that you must exactly know what do I want to reach. And of course, you also must be able to stand in the shoes of the other parties, because compromising means understanding each other. If such an atmosphere does not exist, then you get difficulties. Because if parties that are in government are only busy with their own profile, That's a risky affair for a coalition government.
You're now working with Ernst & Young, private firm.
Yeah.
You're out of politics?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been Prime Minister for more than 8 years, so if you're taking into account the list of longest serving Prime Minister in the Netherlands, I'm rather high on the list. At Ernst & Young, I'm especially responsible for corporate responsibility. So I talk about the role of companies today. It's a fascinating job. I like it very much because I have the impression that the world is changing. There has been a time, we spoke with my studies, in the 70s people said the companies are there for profit and investments and continuity, and the government is there for the social goals. And I never believed in that scheme. Also, private companies do have a responsibility for issues around sustainability, energy and so on. And I really enjoy my new job because I have the possibility now to speak in the Netherlands and in other countries about what is the role of the company.
So even though you're not in politics anymore, you're still working on social reform?
Yeah, I'm working now on the interface of public and private. And therefore I like my job so very much. And then it starts with having the right ideas. Therefore, for me, it has always been very inspiring to speak with students, to listen to them, to have the right interaction. Because I always underline the importance of new ideas, being creative. They are representatives of the new generation.
Yes,
you have to be aware of that.
Yeah, your career, I think, is an inspiration to them and to me. Thank you very much. My guest today has been Yann Peter Balkenende, Prime Minister of the Netherlands from 2002 to 2010. I'm Karen Saupe. Thank you for watching Inner Compass.